All right, hi everyone, this is Stephen Flanagan. This is the model, the one that we primarily use for the heart. It's pretty big. It's much bigger than, a heart should probably be like the size of my fist. So this one's a bit bigger, maybe like 20% larger than like a standard human heart, maybe. So it's pretty big. And it's pretty detailed. It's got a lot of good structures on it. So let me kind of walk through everything. If you saw my last video, I mentioned this blood vessel, which is the aorta. So you have the ascending aorta, then the aortic arch, and then descending aorta. And there, on this model, it's severed. Okay, so we're missing the descending portion of the aorta, which would come kind of down in behind the heart there. And these blood vessels, these big ones that you see kind of on the top of the heart, and then there's another one down here off to the side, there's some on the back there. All those blood vessels are referred to as the great vessels of the heart. So the aorta is one of those great vessels of the heart. What's good about the aorta here is you can see the brachiocephalic trunk, you can see the left common carotid and the left subclavian. They stand out pretty well here. So there you go. Now, let's see, so there's your aorta. And let's just do a little bit of the external anatomy of the heart really quick. We have the two auricles. Here's your right auricle of the heart, looks like kind of a dog's ear, I guess. And then here's the left auricle of the heart. So the auricles are there. They cover up the coronary arteries. So in order to see the coronary arteries, I have to lift the auricle like that. And then you can see the coronary artery here. Okay, so coronary artery comes out right here and goes through this deep sulcus and running through that sulcus. Then, so this one on this side is the right coronary artery. And then the left coronary artery is kind of an interesting thing. The left coronary artery, it goes behind this big blue vessel on top here, which is the pulmonary trunk. So it's actually starts right about there on the aorta and then slides behind the pulmonary trunk and then makes a branch right here. And it branches into the left anterior descending that goes in the interventricular sulcus, kind of all the way down like that. And then the other branch, which is going to go underneath this, the left auricle, comes out the other side like this, is called the circumflex artery. Okay, so the left circumflex artery, or just the circumflex artery is fine, goes through there. All right, one of the first branches of the circumflex artery is this marginal artery. So if you're looking at a heart straight on like this, okay, the two sides are the margins. Okay, so on the left side, we have the left marginal artery there. And on the right side, we have the right marginal artery, which is actually going to be the second branch. So don't worry about this one. The second branch right there is the right marginal artery. Okay. And then if we can take this heart off of the stand like that. Flip it over. So here we're following the right coronary artery around like that. And that branch that goes down the backside in the interventricular sulcus on the backside is called the posterior descending artery. Okay, and that's gonna be the end of, as far as we're concerned, the right coronary artery. On the left coronary artery, we have the first branch being the left anterior descending, the LAD. And then the next branch being the left marginal artery. And then that up there on the top, the remaining branch is going to be the circumflex. Okay, and that's going to go around, and that's where we can stop on the arteries of the heart. Okay, that's what we need to know for the arteries. Now, that blood flows out to the heart like this. Okay, and then it's going to feed the myocardium, and it's going to head back up, and it's going to collect all into this big vein right here. It's called the great cardiac vein. It wraps all the way around in that atrioventricular sulcus. Okay, and then on the back side of the heart, it connects into this big, deep sinus right back here called the coronary sinus. All right, here. That's my little pointer out. So, so you have the great cardiac vein that flows into the coronary sinus on the back of the heart. Okay, posterior of the heart. Okay, so that's the great cardiac vein. Okay, then on the posterior of the heart, in the interventricular sulcus, this is called the middle cardiac vein. It's going to flow up here, and it has this kind of connection point with what's called the small cardiac vein just before the sinus. Okay, So it goes middle cardiac vein, small cardiac vein. They come together and they drop right into the sinus. And all the blood from the heart, from the myocardium of the heart, is all collecting. It's collecting all over the myocardium, and it's all flooding back, and it's going to drop into the sinus on the back of the heart. Okay, and then from the sinus at the back of the heart, it's going to connect directly to the ventricle, or the atrium there, the right atrium. Okay. All right, now also going into the right atrium is the inferior vena cava on the bottom of the model there. There's that hole in the bottom of the model. And then on the top of the model, we have the superior vena cava. Now this is kind of an interesting thing. So it's from here to here is a superior vena cava. Okay, superior vena cava. That artery or that vein that's going across right there is the subclavian. Okay, and then or actually it's the right brachiocephalic artery, and then this is the left brachiocephalic. Okay, and the left brachiocephalic is pretty short, but those are where the subclavians and the jugular come together. Is what makes those brachiocephalics on that. Now in the back, and this is kind of another cool thing that you can see on heart models, is this little. It's not small actually. It's quite a big vessel. If this is a skewer, I mean the skewer basically fits in there just kind of perfect. So you can get a good sense of the size. It's a pretty big little vein there, which is the azygous vein. Okay, the azygous vein is going to drain the blood from the thorax, and primarily from the intercostal muscles. So all the intercostal muscles are going to drop into their blood supply is going to drop into the azygous vein. It's kind of an interesting flow on the azygous vein. There's on one side of the body, the right is the azygous vein. Then on the left side of the body, we have the two veins that would drain from the left portion of the intercostal muscles on the left side of the body. They drain into a superior and an inferior vein called the hemiazygous and accessory hemiazygous veins. The accessory is on top. And those two flow together, and then they flow across. It's a really cool thing. Just make sure you watch my lecture to see the flow that goes back there. But this structure on the back side of the heart model, that is the azygous vein. So just be aware of that. Okay, all the blood from the body is going to come from these two places. So if it's the head and the neck, it's going to flood down into the superior vena cava, or the thoracic cage is also going to flood into the superior vena cava via the azygous vein. And then if it's from the legs and kind of the lower portions of the trunk, it's all going to flood up here like this into the inferior vena cava, and that's going to go into the right side of the heart. Okay, and the right side of the heart here, this is the right atrium. Okay, so it's the right atrium that opens up on that side of the heart. This is the valve that's going to drop down in the ventricle, but for now, let's just kind of talk about the right atrium a little bit. You can see these kinds of kind of meaty beams. And those are going to be all over the inside of the heart. Those meat beams, they're everywhere in there. Those are called trabeculae carnes. This is actually a word that literally means meat beams. So there they are, trabeculae carne, little meat beams. Then you're probably noticing this big circle here. In fetal circulation, there's a hole that goes through and turns the whole heart into a 3-chamber pump rather than a 4-chamber pump. But that hole right there, it closes up when you get when you're out of the womb, and that thing closes and it becomes a different structure. So when it's a hole, we use the same name for the hole in the skull, the foramen ovale. And then when it closes like that and leaves that depression behind, that depression is called the fossa. So fossa for depression, just like in the bones, and then ovalis for it being a circle. So fossa ovalis. Okay, very good. Okay, so blood enters there from the superior vena cava above, the inferior vena cava below. If I stick my finger through, you can see my finger just barely poking through. All right, now inside, once it travels through that ventricle, it's gonna drop into, sorry about the shaky camera, it's gonna drop into the ventricle. Okay, so it comes in and drops into this ventricle and goes through this valve called the tricuspid valve, and it dumps into the right ventricle. Now, the right ventricle, you can see more of these trabeculae carne all over the place. So there's all these like meat beams all over the place. There's one special one here called the moderator band that goes from the outside from the kind of exterior wall across to the interventricular septum, this big bit of meat here in the middle of the heart. There you go, it's called the moderator band, right there. The valve itself is like a parachute. It has these strings, so I can actually get the skewer in between those strings. You can kind of see them. Those strings are called the chordae tendineae. What I tend to do on practicals is I'll kind of like weave a pin through the chordae tendineae so that it's like, pretty obvious to have in the chordae tendineae if that's what I want. They're all attached to the myocardium via this muscle called the papillary muscle. It's right there. Okay, the blood flows in. Okay, and then this ventricle is going to close, and when it does, it pushes the blood up. Okay, and it indiscriminately, it pushes it up, and it'll push it back through this into this valve. It'll push it back through there and into the atria. However, the valve closes. So when the blood comes up like this, it pushes against this valve here, and it pushes against the valve there, and everything pushes against the valve, and the valve slams shut. So blood rushes up, valve slams shut. Blood has nowhere else to go except for out this valve, which is called the pulmonary semilunar valve, that's going to go through this big vessel here called the pulmonary trunk and out the pulmonary arteries into the lungs. Okay, there's a pulmonary artery on this side. So these are the pulmonary arteries heading to the left lung, the left side of the lung, or the left lung, and then this is the pulmonary artery heading to the right lung. Okay, now there's a connection point right here between the right pulmonary artery and the aorta, and we used just a little bit of white there. So it's a teeny tiny little bit of white you can see just right there. Okay, and that little bit of white is the ligamentum arteriosum, which is a leftover shunt from the time when you're a fetus. And the shunt is called, and I'm going to explain it here in a second, it's called the ductus, ductus arteriosus. Okay, so ligamentum arteriosum or ductus arteriosus, kind of same difference. But the idea here is that when the blood leaves in fetal circulation, when the blood leaves and goes up the pulmonary trunk like this from the right ventricle, we don't actually need the blood to go to the lungs. Okay, and so then the blood, instead of going to the lungs, will come up and get shunted through the ductus and into the aorta, and then drop into systemic flow. So it kind of helps prevent that, or it helps kind of make sure that the blood is all flowing into the systemic flow. Anyway, as an adult, that lung over here, you oxygenate the blood, then it comes back along the pulmonary vein. So there are 4 pulmonary veins, 1, 2, 3, 4. The back side of the heart, on the posterior side of the heart. Our heart model, the whole back opens like this, and that opens into the left atrium. And in the left atrium, you can still see that fossa ovalis, which is that hole. It's going to connect the two sides. And the idea here with that hole is when blood flows into the right atrium, okay, we actually don't need it to go to when we're in fetal circulation, we don't even need it to really go into the right ventricle and out to the lungs at all. And so when it flows into the right atrium, it's going to go through that hole over to the left atrium, okay, right through that hole, and then down through the mitral valve. Okay, this is the mitral valve. Also called the bicuspid. It's called the bicuspid because it has 2 big sides to it. Okay, so there's a big cusp here and a big cusp here. So it's called the bicuspid for that reason, which is a good name for it. But it's also called the mitral valve, and it's named after the Pope's hat. So it's called a mitre. Anyway, in fetal circulation, the blood will flow through the mitral valve and into the left ventricle, and then out into the aorta and through to the body. So we just completely skip the right side of the heart with a lot of the blood via that fossa ovale. The foramen ovale. All right. So on this side of the heart, we have the chordae tendineae still. We have this big papillary muscle that's pretty obvious. You can see how much more muscular the wall is on the left side of the heart. It's pumping the blood a lot further, so it has to generate a lot more pressure. On the right side of the heart, we're pumping just as much blood, but we're pumping it not as far. We're pumping it just to either side of the heart into the lungs, and so we don't have to generate quite as much driving pressure. All right. So the blood flows in, the left ventricle here is going to contract, it's going to push the blood up against the mitral valve. The mitral valve slams shut, gives you that heart sound. So the mitral valve and the tricuspid valve, when they slam shut, you get that first sound of the heart. And then the blood has nowhere else to go but through this aortic valve. So there's the aortic semilunar valve. These are both called semilunar valves, the aortic and pulmonary semilunar valves. And you can just name them, they're named basically after where they're going. So this one, aortic semilunar valve is going into the aorta, pulmonary semilunar valve is going into the pulmonary trunk. Okay, and then it goes up into the aorta and out to the body. Okay, so that's the general direction of the blood flow. Yep, I think I covered everything. This is called the interventricular septum here. One more little bit on kind of an interesting thing, or just like something that's a little bit confusing about the way the heart is named. This bottom portion of the heart where it comes to a point is called the apex, which that makes sense because it comes to a point down there at the bottom. You can see it if I stand up like that, it comes to a point. So that's the apex of the heart. Then up here where all the great vessels are, we call this the base of the heart. So it's kind of you might not expect the top of the heart to be called the base of the heart, but that's how it's set up. All right, hope you guys enjoyed. See you in class.